Up to this point, we have used the default dimension style to create our dimension. So now we will learn about creating our own dimension style, and we'll create dimension using that dimension style. So for that, I'll go to this annotate tab, and now I'll click on this drop down. So when you click on this drop down, you'll notice that we have this ISO 25 and also this annotative dimension style. So these two are the default dimension style which will always be present in your drawing. Now in order to create a new dimension style, click on this manage dimension styles. Now this dimension style manager window will pop up, and it will have the two dimension styles which we have already seen. So when you switch between these two dimension styles, you'll see its preview in this preview box. We'll learn more about this annotative feature later on, but for now I'll select this ISO 25 dimension style, and now let's click on new to create our new dimension style. So when you click on this new by selecting the ISO 25 dimension styles, it will create a new dimension style which is a complete replica or a copy of this ISO 25 dimension style, and we can later on modify that dimension style. So I'll click on new and now give it a name. So let's name it as our dim style, and obviously we want it to start with ISO 25, and that means we need to copy its dimension style, and we don't want it to be annotative, so I'll keep this unchecked. Now click on continue, and we are now into this new dimension style window. Now we have lots of tabs here, so this lines, symbols and arrow, text, fit, primary, alternate, units, tolerances, and all of these tabs can be used to modify different features of the dimension and extension lines. So we'll focus on some of the very frequently used tools of the dimension style, and later on in the upcoming videos we'll obviously look at some of the advanced features of this dimension style. So currently the default dimension style looks like this, and we have used this dimension style to make all of our dimensions so far. Now in order to change the properties of lines, the dimension line and the extension line, you need to use the first tab. Now when you go to this lines tab, you'll see this dimensions line panel, and in this panel all the settings which are related to this dimension line, all of these straight dimension lines can be changed. So the first property is color. Let's change it to red, and you can see that the dimension line color has been changed. Also you can change the line type, you can change the line weight of this red dimension line, and in a similar way we have some options here for extension line. So these are the extension lines, so you can change its color to green just to identify it clearly from the dimension line. You can obviously change the line type for first extension line, the second extension line, and the line weight. If you want, you can suppress or remove the extension lines by clicking on these check boxes, and there are also plenty of options which can be changed depending upon the requirement. Now let's move on to symbols and arrows, and here you will see lots of options. For example, the arrowhead. So first we have this close filled arrowhead, but if you want, you can change it to any of these arrowheads. So I'll select this architectural tick, and the arrowhead now changed. You'll also notice that with the change of this first arrowhead, the second will automatically change, but if you change the second arrowhead, it will not change the first one. Now we have these two different arrowheads, which is obviously very bad practice, so you should keep both of them as same arrowheads. Also you can change the arrowhead type of leader line, or you can change the size of these arrows. You can also select between center marks. So right now a center mark will be placed at the center of these kind of geometries, and the size of center mark is specified as 2.5. If you want to add line instead of center mark, you can do that, or you can select none if you don't want any center mark. So I'll keep it at center mark. Also we have the arc length symbol. If you want it, keep the first or second radio button checked. In this case the arc length will precede the text. In this case it will be above the text. And if you don't want the arc length symbol, simply select the none radio button. So the arc length symbol will only appear when you create an arc length. Now let's go to this text option, and obviously in this case you can change the properties of this dimension text everywhere here. Now we have the text style, which is a standard, and we'll learn more about these text style in the next module. For now, I'll just go to this text color and I'll change it to yellow. You can also change the fill color or the background color of this text. Let's change it to cyan, and here we have it, the background color for the text. You can change the text height and you can even draw a frame around the text. So for the sake of simplicity, I'll change the background color and I'll change it to none. We don't want any background color. Also, I'll remove this frame around our text. Now you can see that our text is placed above the dimension line, and it can be seen clearly for this dimension. Here it is placed above dimension line. Also in this case it is above and above. Now if you want it to be centered, or if you want it below, you can change it from these values. Now I've selected centered, and here we have it, it's now centered. Also for this horizontal text, you can select the option from here and the view direction left to right, or whatever the direction which you want. Now in this case, the text is always aligned with the dimension line. So if the dimension is aligned, the text will be aligned. In this case it is completely vertical, so the text is also vertical. But if you want the text to remain horizontal in all of the cases, then select the horizontal option and the text will become horizontal in all of these cases. You can also select the ISO standard value, and whatever the ISO standard follows will be applied here. So I'll select horizontal as I use in most of the cases. And now let's move on to the fit tab. And in this case, we will look at two important options. The first one is annotative. So if you want to make a dimension style annotative, select this annotative checkbox. And if you want to change the overall scale of dimension, including the dimension arrows, text, the gap, and all of these parameters, you can simply add a scale. In this case, I've used an overall scale of 1. That's the default value, and I'll not change it, but we'll create a new dimension style and we'll change the overall scale to explain it clearly. For now, I'll simply click OK with these changes and I'll close it. So now we will make our dimensions, but before that, make sure that our dim style is selected. Now this is the dimension style which we created and it should be selected. Now I'll go to the straight dimension, the linear dimension, and I'll add it here. And here we have it. The dimension will be added with the properties which we have applied. Even if you apply some other dimension like radius, it will take the same properties. And as you know that we have selected this horizontal placement for the text, it has been applied. Also the architectural tick is here. Now there are some parameters here in this dimension style which we have not yet changed. For example, the number of decimal points and also the decimal separator, which is comma in this case. So let's change these values, but for that I'll create a new dimension style. So I'll click on this drop down and I'll select manage dimension styles. So we already have this our dim style. I'll create a copy of this. So I'll select this and I'll click on new. Now I'll simply change its name to our dim style 1. And now select continue. Now we have all the properties as completely same. We'll simply change some of the parameters. The first one will be the overall scale. Now I'll change it to overall scale of 2, and all of the values including text height, arrow size, gaps, and everything will change to twice of its original value. Now let's go to the primary units tab, and here you will see values for these dimensioning formats. So in the linear dimension, we have selected this decimal. If you want to change it to architectural, so this will be the result. The dimension will be shown in feet and inches. Similarly, you can change the precision from here. To see this precision value clearly in decimal, simply select the decimal and you can change the precision to any decimal places, and the dimension will be shown accurate up to that many decimal places. Here we have the decimal separator, which is comma. You can change it to period or to space, whichever you want. So I'll select period in this case. If you want to add prefix or suffix with these dimensions, you can do that as well. And let's look at the angular dimensions value now. So in this case, the angular dimension is decimal degrees. You can change it to grades, radians, degree, minute, second, whatever you want. And here also the precision is set to 0. Let's change it to 2 points of decimal. Now with these changes, I'll simply click on OK and close it. Now let's make our new dimension, but for that, once again I'll make sure that our dim style 1 is selected. Now I'll go to angular and click on this point and click here, and now add the angular dimension. And here you'll see that the size of this dimension, text, arrow and everything is twice of its original value because we have selected that option. Also, the decimal separator is 0, and the angle is shown accurate up to 2 decimal points because we have selected 2 decimal places for angle. So in this way, you can create and add your own dimension styles with different properties in your drawing.